Welcome back to the Kyle Olson Show. The Trafalgar Group, a political polling company based in Atlanta, was pretty much the only one in 2016 that predicted Donald Trump would win Michigan, Pennsylvania, and the Electoral College. Robert Cahaly, founder of the Trafalgar Group, joins me now. So there is a flurry of polls, and it's hard to know what to believe and what to trust. So what's the latest on what's going on in the presidential race in Michigan?
Well, what I can tell you is the what's called the mainstream polls, for whatever that term is worth, are fundamentally flawed, and they're off. I will tell you, of the things that are out there right now on the Real Clear Politics, of all the groups out there doing anything other than us, I would pay more attention to what's coming out of CNBC Change Research and more attention out of Rasmussen. And the latest CNBC Change Research has it at 4. Peter's only up by 4, which I believe is the lowest margin, the closest margin on the Real Clear Politics. And we think they're still a little bit off. They still tend to move a little bit toward D, but they are certainly more accurate than what we think most of the other groups are. There's some fundamental mistakes being made. And I can just go through what I call the three big mistakes. And we refer to most of these big, firms that work with the media companies as Pony Express pollsters. They're just doing things the old way, and it doesn't work anymore. First and foremost, relying on live callers. That's the quote unquote industry standard. We have to have live callers. Well, when you look at a thing called the social desirability bias, and that is a point when a person gives an answer to a poll that they think will have them judged in a favorable light by the person asking the question. Well, that phenomenon is real. It happens a lot, and it is very much in play in this election. And it was in 2016. It was in certain states in 2018. So when that effect is worst is when you have live callers. The more anonymous a person believes the poll to be, the more honest they give the answer. The other fundamental flaw is these long questionnaires. I don't know about you, but every person I ask this, no one can ever come up with anyone. But can you think of one person that if their cell phone rings at 6:30 in the evening and somebody says, I want you to participate in a poll, and they say, well, how long is this going to be? And they say, well, it's going to be 35 questions, about 15 minutes. Do you know anybody who would stop what they're doing and answer that poll?
No.
People have real lives. They're not sitting around waiting on the quote unquote dinner hour and mother to ring a bell and then I'll come sit down for a big family feast. That is not the way it works anymore. People's lives are busy. So we don't believe in these long questionnaires. The third thing they're doing wrong is how they are getting their samples. They are calling universes of, sometimes they're just calling registered voters, sometimes they're just calling phone numbers and trying to figure out whether they are registered voters. They're not calling likely voters. And we think it's important to look through the voter file and to look through and to enhance your voter file with consumer data, which we do, and make an educated guess on who is going to participate in the election. And we like to use hard, crazy numbers like census data and analysis of previous elections, whereas some of these groups are using exit poll data. Well, exit polls are fundamentally flawed because there is no exit poll in America that had someone at every precinct, every hour it was open, and was also measuring the exit polls of people who mailed in their ballots via absentee. So it's fundamentally flawed data. You shouldn't be basing your polls on it. So those three things we think create a problem. Now, the worst part about the hidden vote, which is a reflection of the social desirability bias, and that's when somebody doesn't tell you what they really think, is that we've seen a disproportionate amount of Republicans unwilling to participate in polls. So you have to really work hard to get a Republican to answer. People who are on the Democrat side tend to be 5 to 1 more likely to participate in a poll. So it takes a lot more work to get an actual Republican sample. Now, of the Republicans who are easily willing to participate, you're going to see two things. Republicans that are disenchanted, maybe kind of Romney-type Republicans who can't wait to tell you they're not for Trump. Republicans that are hiding their vote who will just tell you they're for someone other than the fact they're for Trump. So, and add to that, they're being undersampled. So if your goal was to get 38% Republican participation in the poll, let's say it was a particular state, you needed 42 Democrat percent, 38 Republican, the rest, unaffiliated. Well, you end up, with 24% Republican because you just can't get enough to participate. And then what they do is called weighting. So then they give that 24% the weight in the poll to make them 38. Well, now you've taken a disproportionately represented 24 of those who will readily participate in the poll and weighted them up to 38. So you have expanded your error. And this is a very common thing, but they have no incentive to fix it. One of the first things you have to realize is polling is not a meritocracy. The fact that so many of these companies were in business at the end of 2016 is proof of that. If you're working for a party or a campaign or for a media outlet, they care more about, are you reinforcing their narrative of the election than did you get it right? And so you have to look at the incentive of the people doing the poll. What is their real goal?
So when you see a poll from CNN, for example, and it shows that Joe Biden is winning by 13 points in Michigan, and Michiganders are looking at each other, and I live in a swing county. It tends Democrat, but Donald Trump just about won it, Muskegon County. Donald Trump just about won it in 2016. And we look at each other and go, he's not winning. Joe Biden is not winning by 13 points. And it seems like the energy, and I want to get to this too, it seems like the energy is on the Trump side. How do you factor, and what do you find in your polls in terms of an enthusiasm gap? Is that real, and how do you factor that in?
Yes, there's an enthusiasm gap, but it's not what people think it is. Because just as the enthusiasm for Trump is high, the anti-enthusiasm for people who want Trump to lose. You don't have to be necessarily enthusiastic about Biden if you're just enthusiastic about defeating Trump. So I wouldn't put as much in the enthusiasm gap as some do. But what I would say is what affects the enthusiasm even more, and this is why I don't really understand why they're doing this, is Trump voters, what we hear all the time is they're frustrated. They do not like what is going on in the world around them, especially in the last few months. They're very upset about all this violence, defunding police and cancel culture and statues being torn down. They're tired of all that. But they're also afraid to say anything for fear of being judged. So they cannot wait. That voting booth is where they're going to vent this frustration that's building up. And they are going to vote regardless of whether the polls say Trump is going to lose by 100 points. On the other hand, if your enthusiasm is to beat Trump and not for Biden, and you see Trump losing based on all the polls, and you aren't really excited about Biden, what are the odds you're going to vote? People say, well, you guys must be in the tank for Trump. I'm like, no, we don't get paid by the campaign or the RNC. But the way I look at it, I'm Paul Revere for the Biden campaign and for the Democrat Party. You need to take this race seriously. Don't believe these polls. You're in a fight for your life. I'm warning you. So you say what you want, but they are in a real fight. They don't understand it because these votes are being hidden. People are being undersampled, and people don't want to reveal their feelings.
So is the anti-Trump sentiment or energy, does that translate into support for Biden, or is that sort of fracturing and going elsewhere?
Most of it translates to support for Biden because the anti-Trump energy is so much that they want to see him lose. It's not they want to vote against him. They want to see him lose. They understand that they must vote against him for him to lose and vote for someone to make him lose. But again, if all you want to do, if you're some street activist and you're some kid and your parents been paying you to go to this expensive school and now you're rolling around protests and everything else and trying to act cool and doing all this stuff and out there, and you can't wait to see Trump defeated, and everything tells you on election day, hey, Trump is losing by 15 points, do you go to the trouble to go get an absentee ballot from your hometown?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not. So it really is working against their purposes. So the media narrative is trying to be that Trump is losing. And I realize it is helping people raise money up and down the Democrat ticket.
Mm-hmm.
There's no question the money we're seeing pouring into these U.S. Senate races on the Democrat side is a direct result from the media narrative that is, disseminated that Trump is in trouble, so that they think these races are more in play.
So how does this, the state of the presidential race, how does that affect a race like John James and Gary Peters?
Well, it affects it in a couple ways. One, I mean, obviously we only have 1 year as an example, but I will tell you that President Trump winning, having a chance to win Michigan, we haven't had a situation where the president won a state and then the U.S. Senate candidate lost. It just hasn't. It has not been the case. So, I think that what you're seeing is that a hidden vote for Trump might very well also be a vote for James. And if you look at like I said, the latest CNBC Change research, and I know these guys have a D by them, but I'm telling you, I've been watching what they do. Their methodology is a lot better than a lot of the others. I mean, they only have it at 4 points right now.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at 46 and 42, that's a lot of undecided. Now, I will tell you, we have surveyed Michigan ourselves. We showed a small lead by Biden. I believe it was 1 point in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And I could look in those undecideds, and I could look in people who were saying third party and tell you I'd believe those people will vote for Trump.
Mm.
We had him down by 1, but I believe that Trump will win Michigan as of the last poll we did. And we'll be back in Michigan in the next week or so. But so I will tell you, when you're seeing CNBC Change research say it's within 4 points and there's that many undecideds, there are people who are going to vote for Trump hidden in the undecideds.
Do you
John
see?
James could be a benefit of that.
Do you see things in Michigan and around the country? And of course, it almost changes by the day. But do you see things trending in the right direction for Trump? Because it seemed to me over the last couple months, and we're just about out of time, but it seems to me over the last couple months, things have been trending away. But it seems like they've sort of leveled off. Is that what you're seeing? How do you see that?
There's been a little bit of a wave pattern. Things were trending away as the virus was moving along, and his afternoon press conferences started to kind of get off the rails and not be effective. Then you had what happened with Mr. Floyd, and then it got a little worse. And then you had the protest, the riots, the statues, the defund the police. And then it started to get a little better for Trump. And then you had the weekend where he did July 4th. The week after July 4th was Trump's strongest week. That was the first time, as I look at it, I would have told you he could have broken 300 electoral votes, because the whole concept of these guys even think Mount Rushmore is controversial.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, who's against Mount Rushmore? You got to be like a villain from Superman 2 to be against Mount Rushmore.
Right.
Okay. And so all of a sudden their extremeness was out there. So the media told you that all this result of the thing that happened to poor Mr. Floyd, that narrative made Trump look bad. But the fact is, the reaction, the riots, the defund the police, cancel culture, all of it was benefiting Trump, and he was moving back up. There's a reason the media moved away from that and back to coronavirus. I think he dipped down a little bit more, but I would tell you we're getting settled in to probably the next phase of how coronavirus is going to be dealt with. And there's a huge divide among whether people want their kids to go back to school. They tell you that the national numbers are against it. It's not true. The national numbers, if you take out everybody who's not on a fixed income, who is or families who are of having children age, it's massive. They want the kids back in school.
Right.
People are ready to move on and to be trusted to take care of themselves and their families and move on from this. And so I would say it did a down, a up, down, and it's back trending in a positive way for Trump. And that's why the Biden campaign needs to take this seriously. And these, no matter what the polling establishment tells you, there are hidden Trump voters. I promise you, there were women and minorities, especially in your town, who know their friends would judge them harshly for being for Trump, who might tell no one except their spouses they're
Right.
for Trump, but they are. They're not going to put a Trump sticker in their car. They're not going to put one in their yard, but they're going to vote for him.
Interesting. Well, Robert Cahaly, founder of the Trafalgar Group, I hope that we can talk again before the election. And as I said before we started talking, anytime you come to Michigan, I'd love to host you and talk more about what's going on because it's so interesting. So thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely. It's an honor to be here. And, we always love the state that gave us John Smoltz.
That's right. All right. Well, thanks a lot.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining me today. For more of my work, go to Breitbart.com or find me on Twitter, Kyle Olson 4. Use the same handle for Parler, Kyle Olson 4, KYLEOLSON 4. This is The Kyle Olson Show.